everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got on the table my new ankle backup gun. No. This is an SAS II and it's a competition gun. It's a race gun. It's the type of thing you see when somebody's doing IPSC or USPSA. It's definitely not intended to be a carry gun, and it is big. Surprisingly, it's not heavy. It only comes in at 2.39 pounds, which would be a lot for an ankle gun, but not necessarily a lot for something like this. It is, of course, unloaded. And one thing, since I just cycled it, the slide on this thing is just incredibly smooth. You do have a little hitch as it goes through the lockup cycle, but that's just normal operation. But everything on this gun just operates butter smooth. The trigger and everything else, as I go through this and show you this, this thing is optimized for precision. It really is targeting specifically the competition market. Yeah, it's a gun, it shoots a bullet, so you could use it for self-defense. It would be bulky and unwieldy to try to carry it, and it's not really what you would get for a nightstand gun, especially given the MSRP on this is around $2,800, which you can almost get the entire Glock line of 40 caliber, which this is chambered in, and still have money left over for ammo. So why would you pay $2,800 for a gun? It's the precision. When you're actually a competition shooter, that's what you do. The precision associated with the cycling, the reliability, the trigger. The trigger on this is a 3-pound trigger, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So you're buying a tool specifically for a job to do the competition, and that's really what it's meant for. The features that it has is a flared mag well, which makes it much easier as you're doing reloads on the fly, and hundredths of a second is mattering as you're bringing the magazine in. If you're off by a little bit, the flares will catch it and drive it in. And it's even smooth to the point where there's not even a lip right here. As I run my fingernail across it, you can feel that it's just totally smooth. So as I'm driving a magazine in, even if I'm off by a little bit, it'll kind of guide me in. And of course, if you do competition a lot, you get good at it. You're almost bringing the magazine in the palm of your hand. You're just coming in like that. It goes in smooth, it locked. I didn't have to smack it or really hit it hard. It just popped right in. And while I've got the magazine in it, before I pull it out, the magazine release is even a little bit interesting. It's large, it's extended, it's metal, and it's adjustable. You can loosen up the screw and you can rotate it around to exactly where you want it for catching it with your thumb or whatever you want to catch it with to eject it. The grips are heavily checkered. The front and back strap are heavily checkered. The grip is abrasive. We shot a couple hundred rounds through this, and when we were done, not only could you feel this hump, making this spot in my thumb sore, but it abraded my hand a little bit. And again, for competition, you're running, you're getting sweaty, you're getting messy, and you need to keep hold of the gun. That's what this is intended for. A lot of these guys even use gloves. Now, I could feel the fact that it was, chafing at me, but it didn't hurt me. It wasn't like the gun was uncomfortable to shoot. But I noticed the effect of having held this more than I would, a Glock or an XDM or something like that. You notice it's got a lot of relief cuts in the slide, and these are all for reducing weight and making the slide cycle faster. Again, we're playing a game with this thing where hundredths and tenths of a second are mattering, and getting the gun back in action faster after firing a round becomes important. Notice that the the ejection port is flared and extended. This thing we did notice, when it ejected around the spent shell, it ejected with authority. It ejected like it meant it. They were flying a good distance away from the gun. We had 0 malfunctions with this. It just worked, which of course you would expect for something like this. The controls, you've got the ambi thumb safety, and it's real smooth and real light to flick it. Of course, it's ambidextrous. The rest of the controls are on the left side, only set up for a righty. But as a general rule with competition, the safety and the mag release and the trigger are the controls you're going to use most heavily throughout that. Now, I did mention that this particular one is chambered in 40. They also make them in 9, 38 Super, and 45. And a buddy of mine does USPSA, and he was telling me about his competition gun. It wasn't this one, it was a different manufacturer, and that he'd chosen 40. I kind of question that, because 40's got a rather unpleasant, snappy recoil, not necessarily conducive to getting back on the target quickly. And what he explained to me is that you'll use 40 and you'll download it to make major power factor, so you can get your power factor into the division you want to get into and actually end up with less recoil than a 9mm. So it'll take like a 200 grain projectile, download it to 850 feet per second. Normally it would be 1,000 feet per second at a normal 40, and make major power factor, but cut that recoil down. Now you've got a subsonic round and you're cutting that recoil down quite a bit. So 40 is actually very popular in these type of things for those competitions, especially for the guys that hand load. Now if you're just using factory ammo and you're just going to use factory ammo, you probably would look with either 9mm or 45 to get into a major. 38 Super is also fairly popular, it's just hard to get a hold of. The sights on this are actually quite nice sights for what it's intended to be. It's got a large, very large, pronounced back target sight. It's adjustable, windage and elevation, and it's got serrations on it to cut glare, and a fiber optic front sight. So it has a really nice sight picture. Now, for me, I tend to have a little bit harder time doing detailed, accurate shooting, like bullseye style shooting with this, but that's not what these guns are really used for. They're used for hitting the target in the A or B zone. A lot of these guys, they'll hit two shots on a target counts anywhere on the target in a lot of the competitions, or you're hitting steel. So what you're looking for is fast acquisition and quick, reliable precision as far as the gun is going to do exactly what it's supposed to every time. So this is the type of sight you would use. There's the adjustment for windage, the adjustment for elevation, and it allows you to either adjust for if you're round, depending on how you load it, higher or hotter or short or wider, adjust where it hits. So it allows you to customize the gun quite well. The barrel is a heavy barrel. It's stainless steel. And one of the things I noticed, and I'll show you when I get this apart, there is absolutely zero play in this barrel. It doesn't move at all. And that's one of the characteristics of this type of gun, is that you want it to lock up and be exactly in the same place every time without any exception. And this definitely does that. Now this isn't typically the type of gun that we have on our channel, so you might be wondering, what am I doing with this thing? I did not buy a $2,800 gun just so I could talk about it. This is courtesy of our friends over at Guns Galore. Guns Galore is looking at carrying this line, and he got a T&E and gave it to us to do the review on, to get a little more information on it. So as always, Guns Galore, they can get pretty much everything. So if you're looking even at getting into competition, check them out. And of course, we can't put links to gun stores in our description, but they're on the affiliates page of our site, so the Hammer Striker site. So I'll put that in the description. You can go check them out and get something like this or anything else. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is you're trying to get a hold of, they can get it. From dimensionally, the thing is big, and that's really part of the design intent. It's 5 3/4 inches tall. It's 8 3/4 inches long. Actually a little bit longer if you consider the full beaver tail and the back, and it's 1.5 inches thick at the wings of the safety. So it's a big gun. You're not going to strap this thing on your ankle. That's not what it's made for. And it has a 5-inch barrel, as I mentioned earlier. So it's really truly designed for competition. But one thing I found that was interesting about it is I don't have big hands. I got average sized hands, but they're muscular, so they puff up when I grab a hold of something. And one thing I did find is there wasn't room to put my thumbs like this without getting it under the safety and flicking the safety up. So even as big as this thing is, because of these pronounced safety wings, I ended up having to kind of adjust and pin my thumb down and adjust my grip, and also avoid that magazine release. So it was a little bit interesting there. Now I know a lot of the competition guys will shoot with their thumb up on top of the lever. I know Hammer did it when he was shooting it. My thumb's not quite long enough to get up there comfortably. I would end up with the joint right there into the edge of the lever. So I had to come under it. So that is going to be something that you're going to customize your grip to what this does, and focus in, do your training. The guys that do this kind of things, there's thousands of rounds, a week even, to do their training. You're going to zero your grip in and you're going to be good to go. Now I did mention the trigger. Also, might not have mentioned these are 15 round magazines. It comes with 3 of them. Now these are the types of guns that these guys, when they practice, they'll dry fire, and they'll dry fire a lot. We don't own this gun. We don't dry fire guns we don't own, so I have some snap caps. Chamber one of these snap caps so that I can drop the hammer. Now this trigger is nothing short of amazing. There's virtually no take-up. That's all of the take-up right there. And then the break is that. Yes, I did actually move my finger. The trigger is just ultra short, ultra crisp, and it stopped. The trigger stopped the instant it broke. There's an over travel adjustment right in here. There's a screw back in here, and you'd kind of come through here, and you can adjust the over travel. And you can get this sear to the point where it breaks and the trigger stops immediately. Pull the hammer back. Again, just minimal take up, almost non-existent, and watch my finger move just a hair and it drops. Now, surprisingly, as hair triggerish as this was, we really didn't have any problem with it firing when we didn't expect it to. We didn't have any unexpected discharges pointed down range where it fired when we didn't want it to. It was a very easy to control trigger and so precise. Of course, it's got a little travel there because the hammer's not back. And so precise, and the feel of it was just so accurate that we really were able to shoot it quite well. I was really impressed with the trigger on this. One of the other things this has is it has, of course, the thumb safeties. It's a 1911. You can't put the safety on when the hammer's down. It's a 1911-ish style. It does have a half-cock position that will take the hammer and lock it off of the round. So, and it has an internal drop safety. So it does have some drop safeties, which you might say is not important in competition. You're not gonna, you're not carrying this thing. But these guys are running around all the time, and it would not be unheard of to drop one of these. So it's not going to go off if you do drop it, even though it's not really what you would figure as a carry gun. Disassembling it's fairly easy. It looks like a 1911 and it kind of half comes apart like a 1911, but it doesn't completely follow the 1911 pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, show you the internals. And it's actually really easy to take apart. Take the magazine out of it, which the magazines, once you hit the magazine release, they drop out smooth and free. And verify it's clear. Of course, in this case, I'm ejecting that snap cap. Then you just pull it back until there's a cutout in the slide, and this is very much like a 1911. So that cutout in the slide lines up, and then push it. Okay, I'm going to turn to make sure I got it lined up. You push the pin through from the other side. Now, it can be a little bit difficult to push that pin through with your finger because it's recessed. So a lot of times you use like a plastic pick and just push it through and it drops out. And then the gun just comes apart fairly easily after that. Now the only reason it hung up that time is because the barrel lug moved because I had turned the gun upside down. If I hadn't done that to show you guys on camera, it would have just slid right apart. When I was taking this thing apart to clean it, it just worked flawlessly. There's the slide. You know, nice, clean, everything is precision and perfectly machined, perfectly smooth. There's no machining marks anywhere on it. And then the frame, it's got two pretty much full-length guide rods, or slide guide, not guide rods, but slide guides. And there's really, it's your typical 1911-ish mechanism. There's not a lot going on in there. It's fairly simple and straightforward. One thing you'll notice, unlike a 1911, it doesn't have a partial feed ramp here. The feed ramp's entirely, completely within the barrel assembly. But everything in there is just smooth and well done, which of course you would expect when you're going to spend that kind of money on a gun. Now, disassembling the slide is a little more interesting than your typical gun. It has a full-length stainless steel guide rod, and to disassemble it, you have to push the guide rod all the way up and it'll expose a little hole. So I'm going to push it all the way up, and it'll expose a little hole. You take a wire or something like that, and the key to it is you need to make sure that the arm of this wire is not much thicker than the guide rod, because you're going to need to pull this whole thing through. But you put the wire in, turn it up so it lines up, and then let the tension off. And then this whole assembly will just push through. I didn't push it, I didn't get the wire in there enough. It's easy to get it where the point where it's kind of hangs up. It's a little easier to do it if you're not trying to do it on camera and you're just paying it, you're just paying attention to what you're doing. Overall, it's not difficult to disassemble. This is a little bit quirky, but given the intent of this thing to be a precision gun, I don't have a problem with that at all for what it's intended to be. Really smooth, well machined, heavy duty stainless steel guide rod and spring assembly. And that's all captive. And that's all I do. I don't have to take this apart, just set it aside with the wire in it. And then before I take the barrel out, when the barrel's locked up, I can't move it at all. Now I'm pushing my thumb onto it because otherwise it would just drop out. But if the gun were, let's assume this gun were assembled and closed, and the barrel is locked up into the locking notches, it's not going anywhere. There is no play whatsoever in this. But at the same time, when it unlocks, it runs as smooth as could be. So the precision tolerances let this thing lock up tight and be repeatable, which of course is the goal of the competition, yet at the same time work perfectly smoothly. Then the barrel does come out like a 1911. And there's your barrel. Everything's really heavy duty. It's a real thick, heavy duty barrel. Full length, smooth, polished feed ramp. And it's actually a fairly heavy barrel as far as the metal itself. The barrel itself is actually fairly heavy. And of course a 1911 style lug. So this does share a lot of 1911 type characteristics. And it's got some details. Of course it's polished, and it's even got a little bit of sculpting here, which when I first saw it, it actually looked like a defect, but it's not. It's actually sculpted and designed that way. So it's kind of part of the giving it the right clearance where it needs to. You probably won't even see it on camera. There you go. Right there you can see an edge of it. That's not a defect. The barrel's not bulged or failed. That's part of the way they've manufactured it, and it's most likely to give it just that fraction of an inch of tolerance where it needs it to operate smoothly. Then of course you have the slide. There you go, the relief cuts to lighten the slide up so it cycles quickly. Overall, it's just I'm really impressed with the machining and the overall quality of this thing. Putting it back together is pretty much as easy as taking it apart. Just like a 1911, you slide the barrel back in, make sure it locks up, and once it locks up, then again it's nice and solid. Take the guide rod with the U-shape, the horseshoe shape down, slide your little wire thing through there. The locking lug likes to get in the way. Once I have the assembly together, just push it forward. If I do it right. Now what's happening here is my little wire's hanging up. I probably have to pull it back out and adjust the wire. That's one of the slight nuances of it. Of course, when I was cleaning this thing, I could do it 800 times in a row, totally repeatable with any problem. But I'm going to bring it forward, pull out the wire, and then close it back up. And then we'll put this back onto the frame, which it just slides right on nice and easy. And then like a 1911, you capture the barrel lug, bring this back. Now if I didn't catch it quite right, it looks like I didn't catch it right, which is easy enough to do. So I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to just fix that. Of course, that's not the easiest thing to do, to catch that lug just right when you're trying to show it on camera. So you turn it towards your face, you can see it. It's just like if you put together a 1911, it's the same basic concept. So I just took it apart and got it just the way it needed to be. It's not difficult, it's just, much easier if you're facing it. Well, I've got it reassembled. Go ahead and put my little light tube in here and put it in the right way. And I'll show you the barrel. It's conventional rifling, which is desirable for this type of gun because most of these guys will run hand loads and they will run hard cast bullets. Machined very, very smoothly, and the gold finish is also present inside the barrel. So very nice, smooth, clean operating gun. And we fed it a couple different ammos. We fed it some 180 grain. I didn't happen to have any 200 grain. And we fed it some 170 grain. It did change the point of impact a little bit. The sight I could have either adjusted, but I just adapted to it. But if I were going to run this in competition, I would be picking a load and the amount of powder and the bullet weight, and pretty much sticking with that. And I'd have the sight set up and calibrated for exactly what it was I was going to do. So I had mentioned that this is 1911-ish, and that it's big, and that it's a competition gun. So let me show you a few of the other guns that would be in this size category. So just from a sizing perspective, This is a regular government edition, or 1911, and you'll see that it's roughly the same size. When I go beaver tail to beaver tail, it's roughly the same size, other than the grip is significantly larger. This is a double stack grip, so it's holding 15 rounds versus the single stack in a conventional 1911, so that makes the grip a little bit wider and thicker. But overall, as big as it looked, because it's kind of blocky, it really isn't a whole lot bigger than a 1911. And then from a thickness perspective, it's significantly thicker than a 1911, but that's the double stack nature of it. So when you have it just like this, it kind of looks like it's as big as a Desert Eagle, but when you compare it to a 1911, it's really not a whole lot bigger. And there's a couple other companies that make competition guns. So we've got this XDM, and I've also got a Glock, but we'll do them one at a time. So this is an XDM competition, and it's a little bit longer than that when you go beaver tail to beaver tail. And of course the XDM is a little bit thinner. It's not drastically thinner, but it's a little bit thinner. And the XDM is a double stack as well. So from a size perspective, it's not really as big as it looks when you compare it to other guns that are in that use category. Now notice the XDM has a Picatinny rail, and of course the Glock has a Picatinny rail. This doesn't have a Picatinny rail. Typically, if these guys are going to run optics, it's a red dot on the top. They generally don't run lasers and lights and things like that. That's when you get into like the pistol defense leagues where it's regular carry guns. And take this Glock. It is just a hair shorter, the Glock 35. Actually, I believe this one is a 30. Yeah, this is a Glock 35. It's a hair longer than the Glock 35, and just a little bit thicker. And of course, it's taller. Most of that's this flared magwell. So it's not as big as it looks when you compare it to other guns in its category. I'm still not going to try to find an ankle holster for this thing, but beyond that, it really is a well set up gun for its intended purpose. And I definitely thank BUL Armory, who is the manufacturer of this, and Guns Galore of Lakeland for the opportunity to shoot one. It's kind of fun to shoot something like this that you wouldn't normally get hold of and actually do a review on it. So check out, if you're interested in competition guns, check out BUL Armory. They make a whole series of these things. And anything else that you're looking to get a hold of, check out Guns Galore, because they can pretty much get anything you want to. And the interesting note is these are made in Israel. And of course, Israel's a country that's always got somebody trying to attack them. So when it comes to making guns, Israel's kind of figured that formula out. So anything that comes out of Israel is pretty much just gonna work, just like this thing has. So if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe. Check us out on Facebook and Patreon. Have a great day. Thank you.